I suppose many of you have already seen PewDiePie's video about Linux, and a lot of people are reacting to it. I won't be watching a whole video. I will just put some snippets that I have comments on, and it probably won't be like some other comments because I disagree with a lot of things that PewDiePie said in this video. And at the beginning, I want to clear something up. Things that Microsoft is doing with Windows and their other products should be illegal, like telemetry, AI, and having a Microsoft account just to log into your operating systems and stuff like that. And I think that laws for such things should have been done a long time ago because other companies are doing some evil stuff as well. But the reason why I'm making this video is not to defend Microsoft, but just to show you how wrong a person can be about making his arguments. And I don't know, it's because he never took the time to see how things are done in Windows, or he just wanted to make a video that will please Linux users. But this is a very misleading video, and I wish he was talking more about evil stuff that Microsoft is doing now with Windows than the stuff that just are not correct about Windows. So let's get into the video.
For years, I have been tortured by Windows.
Yes, Windows tortured me for many years also, but so did Linux. If you started using Linux when you started using Windows at the beginning, so in the 90s, it was a nightmare. Not only that you were missing programs, not to mention games, but you also had such a poor support for hardware that you literally had to buy a motherboard with specific chip just to make Linux work. And it was like that for years. And of course it was like that because companies at that time didn't care about Linux. And mostly they still don't, but using Linux back in the day was also a nightmare. Linux got more popular when Ubuntu came with its distro because it had an installer that didn't waste your time, and you could install media codecs during the installation. It was just one check and not a bunch of the commands that you had to type in your terminal. But I never care about anything Debian based because the number of PPAs that you had to add just to have some software installed was insane. And at some point I did install Ubuntu and I didn't see anything special, so I just never stick to it. But Ubuntu did make Debian actually usable.
Number one, Windows talks to me like I'm a baby. You want candy crush on your computer?
That is one of the stuff that should be illegal, just to put ads in your operating system. It's okay to put some ads, for instance, in Microsoft Store if companies want to pay for the promotion, but it's not okay to bake it into operating system. That's just evil.
Linux, on the other hand, literally puts a gun in your hand and says,
yeah, that's actually true. Linux will give you permission to even delete your system. I don't know why would you want to do it except to make a video for YouTube or to mess with people who forget to lock their computers. But there is actually an old saying between system administrators, root, God, what's the difference? That's how much power you have if you have a root account on any server, computer, whatever.
Reason number two, as an epic minimalist, the bloat. The bloat is real.
Yes, the bloat is real. If you never actually took the time to actually learn what Windows can do. Ever since Windows 98, I think, and especially since Windows XP, there was a little thing called unattended file. So for those who don't know, every setting in the Windows operating system is stored in a registry. So registry is like a little database of all the settings that you change in Windows. With unattended file, during the installation, you can change your settings to whatever you want. So here I have a virtual machine with fresh Windows 11 installation. Let me full screen that it's not confusing. And all this that I'm gonna show you can be accomplished with that one unattended.xml file. You don't have to do anything else. Yes, I have a local account. No, I don't have a bunch of bloat in my start menu. As you can see, my start menu is empty. There is very little applications that are actually installed. You could say basic stuff that operating system needs, except this. And to make that unattended file, you can just go to this site. Here you have a lot of options that you can change right from the installation. Or if you are lazy like me, you can totally copy somebody else's file. I took my file from this guy memory and I changed some preferences that suits me better. So you can look at my unattended file on my GitHub. It is just basic text file that you can edit even in a notepad. It all depends what you want to remove from Windows, how you want to set it up. And yes, the first time it will take you probably a lot of time until you make it just as you like, but it's the same thing for Linux, especially for Arch. If you want to make it usable, you have to waste a lot of time.
Bothered me. Anytime I install a new Windows, I spent like an hour trying to uninstall all the pre-packaged BS that
So instead of him wasting an hour just trying to manually uninstall program by program, he could just have used unattended file and none of the stuff would be installed. You know, I'm always surprised not only at PewDiePie, but all the Linux users that are always complaining about Windows that they actually don't use. They all have time to waste on Linux, but none of them actually took the time to find out stuff about Windows, and they are just complaining about things that you can actually remove with one simple file. And when they talk about Windows, there are so much wrong things with Windows that you can talk about. None of them are actually talking about real problems with Windows and operating system in general and all the software. So all this nonsense is just stupid to me.
I'm still gonna put ads in here. Yes. Put a little AI in here.
Yes, AI and ads should be, and this is where I'm gonna be using a lot through this video, illegal in operating systems. You can put it as an addition, you know, if you want AI, install this package. Like for instance, PowerToys in Windows, which is beyond me why this is not the default package when installing Windows, because it has so much useful stuff, but they are pushing for Copilot and ads, whatever.
With Linux, nothing. Serenity. Peace.
That's so not true. Yes, maybe you don't have pre-installed AI and ads, but if you are not using a distro with desktop environment, the amount of customization and time you have to put in just to make some distro usable is ridiculous. That's not Serenity in my opinion.
Don't even get me started on the Windows taskbar.
What about Windows taskbar? It's empty. There is nothing there. Here, nothing if you just make a clean installation of Windows. This stuff you get only if you log in with Microsoft account, which there is absolutely no good reason to do. And even this stuff can be customized and probably cleaned up if you just take the time to do it.
You control what's on your computer.
You also control what is on your Windows machine. You choose which applications you want to install. You choose which settings you want to have on Windows. Yes, some things can't be turned off, but it's not like Microsoft gave you an operating system and you can use only what they tell you. That's just not true.
Reason number 3, customization.
That is the only correct thing that he said in the whole video. The amount of customization you can do with Linux is light years away even from Windows and macOS. Windows, with every version you can customize less and less. It's not like in those Windows XP days when customization was wild even on Windows and even better than on Linux. But Microsoft is giving you less and less freedom to change stuff, which for most people don't even care. They just use computer to, I don't know, play games or watch a video, listen to music, answer emails. I mean, how much customization do you need for that? There are people, many of them, that really don't care about operating systems.
Customizing on Linux is called rising,
and also a huge waste of time. When you first start with Linux and get into customizing everything, yes, you will waste a lot of time. And even after a few days, when you set up everything just the way you like, after a few weeks or a month, you won't be happy with it and you will want to change it, and then you will waste another bunch of time. But after a while you just won't care for it and you will customize your computer just so you can make a video and show off on Reddit or something.
Now, reason number 4, gaming. Gaming on Linux is finally real.
Yes and no. It is true that you can play a lot of games, but most of those games are also that almost nobody plays or a very little people are playing. Every game that has those kernel anti-cheats or whatever they are doing these days, which also should be illegal, won't work on Linux. Plus, a lot of popular games and new games won't work on Linux out of the box. They either won't work at all, or you will have to spend a lot of time making them work. And the best example how gaming is not that great on Linux is a video from DISTROTUBE where he wanted to play Diablo 2, and since he has Arch-based distribution, I think he uses Arco, and he wanted to install the game, and the game you have to install through Battle.net. And when he wanted to install the game,
like some people say they solved it doing this and that, and I tried all kinds of things. I spent literally like 3 hours a couple of mornings ago trying to get Battle.net installed through Lutris, and I gave up.
So imagine if you just want to play a game that you like and not that is available on some operating system that you don't even care about. And you spend 3 hours just to make the game work instead of just playing. I don't even bother with gaming on Linux. I have my ancient desktop that I have few games on, and it's running Windows 10. And when I want to play, I just turn on the computer. I play for how much I want, and then I turn it off. And that's basically it. The only thing that I do on that computer is editing videos. Other times, I don't even turn on that machine. So when Felix here says that Linux gaming is a thing, it's really not. Don't get me started on all the peripherals that just don't work on Linux, like, for instance, keyboards that have special functionality only if you install software from that company, or gadgets for streaming.
I actually installed Linux 15 years ago. That's right, I'm old. And I uninstalled it after like a couple days, as a lot of people do, when they realize, oh, I can't use the things I need on Linux. And for me, that was gaming back then, because
first time that I installed Linux, maybe someday I will tell you how I got into Linux and for what I used it. Let's say at 10,000 subscribers.
gaming on Linux is real, at last. So Valve came in like Gandalf in Helm's Deep.
There is so much things wrong with that sentence. Valve is even a worse company than Microsoft. At least Windows you can use without creating an account. You can more or less control things that are sent to Microsoft. But Steam you can only use if you log into Steam. Play Steam games, you have to at least once log into Steam. And for those games that don't require internet connection, you can play them if offline mode. But in order to do that, you still had to log into Steam at least once and save your credentials. And the amount of data that Valve is collecting from Steam is probably the same as Windows. If you look at the Disc Official's video about Valve, you can get a little insight into what Valve is actually doing. And they practically have a monopoly on game store, which should also be illegal. Yes, Epic has their own store and some other companies, but mostly if you are not a big company and you don't have a game on Steam, you probably won't make any money. What I don't understand is that all Linux YouTubers are so praising Valve and how they try to make gaming possible on Linux, but none of them mentions the evil stuff that Valve is doing. How is it okay for Valve to collect all your data from your Linux system, and when Microsoft do it, it's not okay? Or if Google do it, it's not okay. The same thing is with the Discord. Most of the people today use Discord, even on Linux. So I don't understand the logic. Okay, so my operating system is not collecting that much data, but all the applications that I have on that operating system are, and that is okay. What kind of privacy is that?
This is a perfect example how Linux benefits everyone. The fact that Valve as a company recognized maybe Microsoft has a bit too much power.
What about how much power Valve has?
If they wanted to and started being shady, locking things down, taking cuts, they absolutely could. And it's not like it
And so can Valve. And it's not like they are not doing it.
would be uncharacteristics for them to do. So Valve started improving gaming on Linux, boosted driver support, and they built on what was already there from open source software like Wine. By doing this, Valve benefits, consumer benefits, ecosystem grows.
No, Valve benefits the most. People who use Linux for privacy certainly don't benefit from Steam. For me, if I already have a company whose software I'm already using is stealing my data and there is no way I can stop it, what's for me to have another company doing the same thing? That's why on my Windows and gaming machine, I only have games and video editing, and everything else is on Linux.
Win, win, win. It really feels like an alternate reality. This totally could not have been a thing. And it also makes me realize just how many things can be better if people just weren't so greedy. Can we?
Oh yeah, but that's true for every single thing in the world. If people were not so greedy, like big pharma, politicians, governments, whichever branch that exists in this world, if it wasn't so greedy, the world would be a much better place.
So thank you, Linux, and thank you, Base Gaben.
I don't know why he's thanking Linux, because Linux is financed by big tech and developed by the big tech. If you go to Linux Foundation site, which for those who you don't know, is paying for the kernel development. If you look at the companies here, Microsoft, Huawei, Samsung, IBM, Oracle, Facebook, and especially if you go to the member page of Linux Foundation, Platinum members are the one that give the most money to a company. So you have Microsoft, Facebook, IBM, Oracle, and the rest of them. I'm surprised that Google is only a gold member. But all these companies not only give money for paychecks to kernel developers, but they are also giving their people to work on kernel. And look who is on the board of the directors: Sony, Red Hat, Intel, Huawei, Samsung, Microsoft, Facebook, Hitachi, Intel, Oracle. All the companies that you complain about are actually controlling what is being put into the kernel, and for most of the time into Linux itself. But that's a story for another video.
Because everything good comes with a sacrifice. If you're swapping to Linux, you'll likely have to give something up. I don't know what that is.
Well, that depends. If you're just everyday user that is not using some specialized software or is not gaming, or you play games that actually work on Linux, you won't have to sacrifice anything. And I would say that is 90% of people. But nowadays, people tend to use mobile phones more than the actual computer.
But for me, it was Photoshop. I used Photoshop, again, for 15 years. I'll swap over. I know the open source alternative is GIMP. I've heard about this forever.
Yeah, as far as I know, as Eric Murphy said, it is a toy compared to Photoshop. I tried GIMP for, yes, thumbnails, but the simplest things were so dumb. And let's be real. If you are using Photoshop just to make thumbnails, that's a major overkill. Most of the thumbnails can be done in PowerPoint. The most, let's say, advanced program that you need for thumbnails are programs like Canva, and I would say free version. I don't know how much stuff they put behind the paywall, but this is even overkill for just thumbnails. Paying to Adobe for Photoshop just so you can make thumbnails is just stupid. And if you want to do a professional work, GIMP is not your option. I have a friend that is graphical designer, and she also didn't want to pay to Adobe all that fees. She tried GIMP and she said it's unusable for what she needs.
I go to their website, I click through the 1,000 pages just to find the goddamn unsubscribe button, and I was so ready. Just unsubscribe. They hit me with an unsubscription fee.
That should also be illegal. I don't know how they are even allowed to do that. But like I said, laws for software products should have been made long time ago, and maybe someday I will make a video about all the stuff that I think should be illegal. But you can also watch Louis Rosman channel. He's a big advocate for right to repair and to make illegal stuff that companies are doing today. And if more and more people are not complaining about stuff will never change.
So like I said, the open source alternative is GIMP.
No, it's not. Don't use it if you don't want to be frustrated. So much simple things that you can find in any software are made so complicated without no reason.
What you gain on Linux is so much more. Freedom.
Not true. So not true.
Join us. Now that I've convinced you to swap to Linux, you have the wonderful choice of picking a distro.
Now let's see what distro he suggested. Arch Linux, I wouldn't call that a distro, I would call that a package manager, but that's a story for another video. Debian, don't use on desktop. Since Fedora is owned by a Red Hat, yeah, they're gonna put telemetry and AI in it, and it will be just like Windows. It's just a matter of time. I don't know what even this is. Now, Gentoo here is the most, let's say, distro if you want to build your system for your hardware. Let's say that. But it also compiles everything from source, which is so time consuming, and don't even get me on dependency hell. I think they said that they will start using binary packages, which was like hell freezes over, but Arch Linux made an installed script, so I guess hell did froze over. Mandriva is not a distro anymore. You have Open Mandriva, but they have their own problems. I wouldn't recommend that for beginners. Linux Mint is definitely new user-friendly distro, as is Kubuntu. I would just never recommend Ubuntu to somebody that switches from Windows. I will recommend Kubuntu. OpenSUSE, no. PC Linux OS, I think they are like rolling distro, but the problem with all these, let's say, little distros is that their software repository is not that big. Yes, most of the problems you can solve with Flatpaks or app images, but still, Red Hat is not a desktop distro. I don't know even what this is. Slackware, they're just old. They have releases every few years. Definitely not a desktop distro. Slacks, I think they have installation that is based on Slackware and on Debian, and both Slackware and Debian have ancient software, so don't use it. So yes, this is pretty bad example of Linux distros you should use as desktop user, especially new to Linux.
Oh, yay, so many of them. I hear people going like, I don't know which one to pick, what do I do?
So from all that, let's say, choice, there really isn't much of a choice. I've been saying that I will make a distro video for so long, but I just don't have a will to record it.
I went with Mint.
Linux Mint is good for people that are just browsing the internet, watching videos, listening to music, because Linux Mint is based on Ubuntu LTS. So if you have a newer hardware or something, your kernel will probably be too old. I don't know how much stuff they backport, but just don't use it if you want to do anything useful. So use Linux Mint only if you are using your computer for that basic tasks.
So then I found another command called blame, and then you can see exactly what part is kind of slowing down your system. On Windows, if my computer is kind of slow, you just kind of deal with it.
Not true.
It's like, oh, okay, well, what can you do?
For instance, if your Windows is slow, you can always go to Task Manager, see what is eating your CPU or see what is eating your memory. You can also look at tray and see how much applications are actually running in the background and shouldn't be. You can also disable a bunch of these things in your startup menu and turn off everything that you actually don't need for running Windows. and trust me, that list can get very long. You can also go to event viewer to see if you are getting a bunch of messages. There are a couple of places you can go in Windows and see what is clogging your computer, but Task Manager, in my opinion, is the first one you should look at.
The second thing that blew my mind with the Linux terminal was just how fast it is at searching. Searching on Windows is so annoying. It takes forever. Sometimes it doesn't even find the file, even though you type the
First of all, for searching files on your Windows machine, you shouldn't be using the Start menu search, but you should use your Windows Explorer. Usually the files you have are not scattered all over the disk. If you are organized at all, you usually have a separate partition for your specific files. And even on that partition, the files are in some folders. So for instance, if you are looking file on a specific disk, I usually have the idea where my file is. I will go to the specific folder, but even if for some reason you don't know where you put your files, you just type in some part of the name of the file and Windows Explorer will find it. And here under search options, you can actually define what you are looking for in more detail, for instance, file contents, and it will find that it's located here, and if you double click on that link, it will just open your file. Nobody searches for file like this. And if the default Windows search is too slow for you, you have a little program, Everything, that is completely free and it's much faster than the standard Windows search. And nobody should be searching for their files like this. And another thing, if you are going to search for your files through Start menu, in Windows settings, you go under Privacy and Security, you go under Searching Windows, and here on the Customize Search location, you can define which locations you want your search to look in. Of course, you can modify, delete, you can go under Advanced, and of course through Unattended file, I already removed all the junk that I want my search to be looking at. So even if I write here YouTube, you can see this was pretty fast and it didn't go to web to search for stupid things. And this is even with indexing turned off. So this is just nonsense to make a reason why Linux is better, because it's not. And just to be clear, you don't have to know special commands or syntax to search for something in Windows Explorer. You can just choose your options from GUI, and these options are more than enough for average user.
You don't have to just search the file. You can also search text inside the file.
Like I said, you can do this on Windows and you don't have to use some special command that you don't know that even exists. You just go to search options and choose file content.
Bada bing, bada boom. What the hell is this? Spotify password text.
And if you look here, all his files that are actually found are in .cache directory, which is definitely not a directory you should be looking for anything.
Boom. What the hell is this? Spotify password.
Cached. That's cached. That's cached folder. You don't look for your files in cached folder. That's why you search for files with your file explorer, where you go to the folder where you actually keep your files and then you search only that folder.
The most obvious thing with the terminal is that, let's say you install the operating system and you need to also put all the programs that you want to use on it. Usually you have to go on the browser, Google it, look up their page, go to their...
No, that's just wrong. I don't know if anybody is actually installing programs like this. If he's doing, then he's about 15 years behind what Windows actually has. Ever since 2011, I think. Yes, March 2011, so 14 years ago, you had Chocolate, which is a package manager to install software on Microsoft Windows. But since Microsoft came with Winget and their Microsoft Store, there is really no need to install programs like this. I find just a few programs that are not in Winget or Chocolate, and I have them downloaded in separate folder. Or the best way to install anything on Windows is through UNIGET UI, formerly known as WinGet UI, and here you type in the name of the package, and then it lists all the software you can install. The safest way is to look if the source is WinGet and it has the version. It's not like this unknown. You click on it and then you click on install selected packages, and here it, like on Linux, asks you for your sudo password, which you don't have to type in. You just click yes, I want to run that as sudo, or should I say administrator, and you can do this for every program you want. Like I said previously, not all programs are here, but most of them are. It's just like on Linux. Sometimes you need to add additional repository or compile it from source if it's not in your distribution. Like you could see in OpenMandriva, they have very little software that I actually use. So the only option was for me to download it from the internet, basically GitHub, and install it from source, which is just a bunch of waste of time. And one of the features that none of the Linux packages have, which I wish they had, is these package bundles. You can click on install packages and then you choose which applications you want to have. I will just randomly click, and then you go and add selection to bundle, and then you get all the applications you want to have installed. You go to save bundle as, you give it a name and you save it, and you will get a little file with ubundle extension. Next time you reinstall Windows or you install Windows on another machine, instead of searching here for every single package that you want to have, you just install UNIGET UI, you copy this ubundle file, and then you go to open an existing bundle, click on the file, open, select everything you want, and then you go to install selection. And that's it. This is how software is installed on Windows these days. On Linux, you have to still make a script with everything that you want. That script is viable only on package manager and distribution that is written for. It's a little simple if you install everything as Flatpaks, but you can't install everything with Flatpaks. Plus, Flatpaks have their permission problems, which is another pain. Just try running Wireshark from Flatpak. Good luck. So this way of installing was early 2000s, but ever since Chocolate came out, I mean, nobody installs stuff like that. And back in the Windows XP days, there was a website where you would just check software you want to install. They didn't have much, but they had the ones that most people used. Yeah, nobody installs Windows software like this for years. The only time you will install software like this if you have some specialized software, like for instance DaVinci Resolve, which you never find in any store or package manager. And when you download it, you have to enter your data just to download file, even for free version, which should also be illegal, but okay, you can easily bypass that. So giving this as an example is just wrong.
The fake ads and all that crap.
Also, for your browser, you can add, for instance, you block origin that mostly blocks all the ads, so whatever.
It's all yada yada. It takes forever. On Linux, you just go sudo apt install. What do we want? We want VLC.
This will work for programs that are in the repository. And like I said before, with Flatpaks, much of those things can be avoided, but usually distro repositories are missing a lot of useful software. So this won't be the case for every single application you want to install, just like on Windows. For instance, you won't find Free File Sync. And Free File Sync Flatpak version in most of the cases won't work properly, and it's best just to go to their website and download their install script.
Yes, I know what all of this means. every single letter I'm soaking.
I don't think that anybody is looking at stuff being installed, and usually the software that you mostly use, you just put in a script and you run it once, and then you go to watch TV or eat something and don't look at your screen, right?
There's so much you can do with the terminal. It's insanely powerful. I can make a whole video about it.
Yes, you can do a lot of stuff in the terminal, but you can also do a lot of stuff in GUI. And for the most of the people, GUI stuff is more than enough.
I mentioned before there's many distros of Linux, and I wanted to try one called Arch, partially because of the meme.
I wouldn't call Arch a distro, I would call it a package manager, and I will talk about that more if I ever make a video about the distributions on Linux.
It's a little difficult to install Arch, so it's like a flex to use it.
It was never difficult to install Arch Linux, it was just time consuming. Before their install script, that is complete waste of time. You had a bunch of commands that you could just copy and paste, and then you would have Arch installed.
I always get stuck on the dumbest ever for like 12 hours. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, exactly. On Linux, you can stuck on some things for hours and not find a solution. And I would really like to know how much time did he spend on all the installation and all the configuration and rising. It was probably a couple of days, which is way too much time to be spending on just an operating system. And most of the people are just not interested in that. They just want to run their game or application and be done with it.
But I also wanted to download Arch because it's a minimalist distro. Whatever you put, or at least 90% of it, is there because you decided to put.
I don't know what does he mean by minimalist distro. Maybe because when you install it, it practically has nothing on it and you have to do it all yourself. But you can do the same thing on every distro that there is. Like I said, I don't remember the last time I installed a package on a Linux distro without a script. And the same way you install stuff, you can remove stuff. So basically on every distro, you have only stuff that you want. But still Arch uses systemd, which for some reason people don't like. And that is installed by default. And if you want to change that, I don't know if that's even possible. But you certainly will have to waste a lot more time. Bash is default for your root. So not all the things that are there are by your choosing. It's just because the alternative is much painful to put. The real, let's say, I don't know if I should call it that, advanced distro is Gentoo, in which you can compile all the software just for your hardware, and you can even add flags what to include with some software and what not. I used Gentoo a long time ago, not by choice, but because I had to, and you can really customize your machine to so much detail that Arch Linux just doesn't support.
And it's also very highly customizable.
All the Linux distros are customizable. I mean, all the distros are just people choosing like Lego switch to put in their distribution. Just a few distributions are, let's say different stuff than others, but most of the distros are the same. They have nothing special in them. And I would say that you need a lot more time to make Arch actually usable than you need for Windows to make it usable. On Arch, you have to install a bunch of stuff, configure a bunch of stuff. On Windows, you just have to remove a bunch of stuff.
My first favorite thing, which I have on Mint as well, is just shortcuts on my keyboard to open programs. Open Terminal, open File Manager, open browser, close.
You can do the same thing in Windows. Just as you define shortcuts for running programs on Linux, you can definitely define them on Windows. For instance, for those who don't know, if you have applications on taskbar, you can press Win key and the number on which position that application is, and you can easily start that application. That is by far the easiest way to start applications. But if that is not enough for you, you can go, for instance, right click on the icon of the program, open file location. Here you go to properties, then you have a shortcut, and then shortcut key, and then you assign which shortcut you want. You can even change icon. You can run it always as administrator. You have a lot of options. But for me, this is enough. This is too much time wasted. But definitely the best way to make shortcuts on Windows, and not just for starting programs, but also for macros, is auto hotkey. And yes, just like with Linux, you have to take a little time to learn the syntax on how to do things, but this is a free program and it's very powerful, and it's much more powerful than anything that he has set up here.
But even in general, you know, the whole like, okay, let me click on the start menu and just find the...
See, this is another misrepresentation of Windows. If you want to run a program, you just press Win key, type in the name of the program, and it will pop up. Also, if you have PowerToys installed, you can press Alt space and you will get the same menu for running programs, just like on Linux. The thing he's doing is just stupid.
If I don't have it keybind, I can open Rofi and just search for it and open it.
Win key or Alt space, it's the same.
I don't want to over-explain things as well, but yeah, this is my terminal on this setup. I'm using Alacrity, and this is NeoFetch, which shows my specs.
Well, so he's a beginner, and we will ignore the thing that NeoFetch GitHub repository is archived and is no longer maintained. There is other alternatives.
So I'm running Hyperland, which is this beautiful tile manager. It automatically sorts it for me whenever I open something. This is such a nice workflow, and I can close it all as well. When you're on a laptop, when you have limited screen space, it's such a great way to work with it. And if my workspace is full, I can look at this, swap to another one. This is workspace number 2. And
yes, as he mentioned here, Windows and Mac have these two, and no, it's not true that Linux is mile ahead with tiling managers. If he ever bothered just to search on the internet for tiling window manager for Windows, he would get some results. And GLAZE is doing the same thing like most of the Linux tiling window managers, except i3, which I think is the best tiling window manager for managing your Windows, and definitely most advanced. And a lot of people call it a beginner's tiling window manager, but they don't know what they are talking about.
But then I open my browser and it's like, oh, that took forever. And it loads so ugly. So I figured out a way, and it's so dumb. I won't explain how I did it.
I wish he explained how he did it and what was the problem, because it would be interesting to see how he did it, but that's just me.
The first thing I customized was a Waybar. It's like the Windows taskbar, except you decide exactly what's on it and customizing it. I put calendar, turn it on and off, internet, Bluetooth, quick access to all these things, you know. I really enjoy this as well. It's basically just tells me if I'm connected to... up here it shows which workspace I'm using.
Now he's showing here his Waybar and the stuff he has on it. As I can see, this is all the stuff that I usually have on my Windows taskbar as well, except for the number of workspaces. But there is nothing special here and no extra functionality than the Windows taskbar. Maybe you don't have such flexibility to what you put on your Windows taskbar, but the main things are there. For instance, on any computer, I just need my applications. I need to see if network is connected or not, to adjust the volume. If I'm on laptop, how full is my battery? And here I have the temperature for my CPU and GPU, the load, network traffic, and that's basically all I need from any taskbar. I don't like it to be cluttered with unnecessary things. I wonder why he has here Cyrillic letters and here Latin letters, and why aren't they on all of his widgets? But okay, I don't watch many of his videos because it's not that interesting for me. I really only liked his video when he was covering the books and, let's say, more serious videos than the rest of it, but that's just me.
This is so sick to me because I'm remembering what this laptop used to be running Windows.
Well, if he used Windows the way he did, meaning that he didn't didn't clean up Windows, I can understand, but I wouldn't use Windows like he's using it even on a new machine. I put a Windows 11 on my, I think now 11 years old laptop, and it works just fine for everyday stuff. Basically everything you can do on Linux, you can do on Windows 11 on such an old computer. I can run my virtual machines. I can't run games, at least not the big ones, and editing videos is just a pain, but everything else works just fine. The same thing would be if I have Linux on it installed. Basically I use this laptop every time I want to play with something on it. Sometimes I have a Linux there, and now for a couple of months is Windows 11, but I planned on putting a BSD on it, but I'm just too lazy to reinstall it again.
I was trying to update my drivers for my GPU, and I got a black screen 6 times.
And this is something I wish he told more, how much time he needed to set all this up. And I think it was days, if not even weeks, how much problems he had. And he mentioned earlier about stuck on one problem for 12 hours. So Linux is really not a solution for people who are not interested in computers, who just use computers as a tool and not as a hobby. Because the difference between him and probably most of the people is that he doesn't have a job that he has to go to for 8 hours and come back home, but he has whole day to play with whatever he wants. And most of the people, when they come home from work, I doubt they want to spend the next 5 hours customizing only their operating system and nothing else. It's like when I buy a car, I want that car to come assembled so I can sit in it and drive where I want. I don't want to decide on every single part, which should it be, how would it be set up, how it should look. I just want the car to take me from place A to place B. That's it. I can use check marks to say I want a radio, I want heated seat and stuff like that, but nothing else. And I think that's how it's for most people when it comes to computers. They just want to install their application and use it. The same thing for, let's say, keyboards, headphones, whatever gadgets you use with your computer. You just want it to work and nothing else.
I had to do a hard restore every time. It's not the most fun thing in the world. There are other things I could rather be doing, which is why I need you to install Linux, so the more people we can get together, the better Linux becomes.
I don't think that is true. The more people use Linux, the more issues you will find. And I doubt that those will be fixed, because unless some companies stands behind projects like KDE, XFC, Hyperland, there is just not enough time for them to fix everything. Plus, everybody would see how actually broken Linux is when used on desktop. Plus, all the AI and telemetry would just come to Linux and not stay on Windows.
And it also already exists everywhere. NASA, SpaceX, it runs on Linux. All the supercomputers, your TV, your smart fridge, your phone if it's Android.
Android is not Linux. I know many people would like to think that, but it's not. Just like some people say that macOS is based on FreeBSD, but it's not. Maybe it started like that, but it's been a long time that is not true.
Now, if you're even just a little bit curious, I recommend trying Linux. Maybe try dual booting.
Do not dual boot. If you mess something up, you will mess up your Windows installation and your Linux installation, and you will have to start with both from the beginning. I don't dual boot for years just because of that reason. If you want to try Linux, just make a virtual machine and try to play there, or install it on external USB disk and boot from there. Just don't dual boot.
Thank you for watching. Let me just type out my goodbyes.
For me, this video is very misguiding. He's totally wrong about Windows, and I don't think he pointed enough how much time he spent on customizing, installing, especially Arch. On Mint, I don't think he spent that much time. For me, it would be much more powerful to show what things Microsoft is actually farming from you, and to show all the evil stuff that Microsoft is doing, not only with Windows, but with Microsoft products, but I guess this video was only for showing off his Linux rising and using Linux than actually useful things that would maybe help people to wake up. Because Linux is not a solution for Microsoft and other companies doing shady stuff with their software and operating system. Because if with some miracle Linux becomes more popular, all this AI and telemetry will just switch to Linux a lot more than already is. Red Hat already has plans to go in that direction, which for desktop means Fedora, because Fedora is testing distro for Red Hat. And you can see with KDE they have telemetry already in all of their applications that cannot be uninstalled. It's just sort of built in program functionality, which is the same thing that Microsoft is doing, except it's not turned on by default. But now that Valve has became sugar daddy for Arch and is sponsoring KDE for some stuff they want to be done, I think that it's just a matter of time that all of them will find a reason to justify telemetry be turned on by default. Like you can see with some other distros, Debian has their popularity contest or whatever that is for years now, that is just taking some stuff from you by default. Luckily you can uninstall it for now. Arch is pinging all the time to Arch servers unless you turn it off. And since kernel is financed by all these big tech companies and most of the people that work on the kernel are their employees, who knows what is already in that code. Don't even get me started on Mozilla. So just because it's open source and it runs on Linux doesn't make it good or better by default. Like Linus himself said, nobody knows every part of the kernel at once. Everybody is in charge for one part and doesn't know what is in the other parts of the kernel. And the best example for open source was that XYZ, whatever should I call it, that thing, where even when they discovered that it has some bad code in it, they didn't understand what actually it does for days. So just because it's open and everybody can read it doesn't mean that people actually check the code or understand the code, because let's be real, most of the programmers are bad at programming. They're just a reality. And the most funny thing was that, let's call it bug, in that library was discovered by Microsoft employee and not by people who actually work on Linux. And if PewDiePie ever watches this video, I have a message for you. You're not a true Linux user until you put your .files on GitHub.